were accurate. I think the pulse of the people now really suggests that the public can see through PR.
Of a woman who was sort of plucked from the masses to become royalty. And
Diego, California, a seemingly exasperated Thomas makes a heartfelt plea to his daughter.
Well, I love you very much.
Everyone recognizes the image. The magazine covers. The speeches about living truthfully. The carefully crafted message of authenticity broadcast from that Montecito mansion. It became a brand worth millions, and most people accepted it at face value. But there's a catch when your entire identity is built on being real. Your own history has to hold up. Every chapter. Every year. Lately, though, questions have started to surface. Not small details you can brush aside. Bigger gaps. A missing stretch of time. Public records quietly sealed in 2018. And a rumor that just won't fade, no matter how often it's dismissed. When the narrative begins to shift, the shine starts to dull. And once cracks appear in the foundation, people look closer. The story that once seemed airtight suddenly feels unfinished. Stay with me, because what comes next could reshape the way this whole image is seen.
The stories would come out. So apparently, according to other journalists, we found out that there were a lot of porcupines.
Let's take a closer look. Usually, putting together a celebrity's backstory isn't complicated. You can follow the timeline step by step. School years. Early jobs. The first big break. Awkward photos from their 20s. Failed auditions. Side hustles before fame finally hit. Most public figures leave a clear trail you can trace from the beginning to the spotlight. But this is where it starts to feel different. Two heavyweight investigative writers, Tom Bauer and Andrew Morton, reportedly ran into serious obstacles when trying to reconstruct her life before Harry entered the picture. These are not casual commentators. They are known for digging deep, combing through records, tracking down first-hand sources, and piecing together details others overlook. They've written extensively about figures like Princess Diana and some of the world's most powerful business leaders. They've uncovered controversies, documented private struggles, and brought hidden chapters into public view. And yet, when it came to this story, both described hitting the same wall.
Well, I was hoping that maybe we would have the chance to speak, that she would know I was here.
What stood out most was the strange sense of frustration surrounding her early years. Both writers described real difficulty in uncovering who she truly was before the global attention. Not the polished, camera-ready version. Not the carefully managed public persona. The actual person living those in-between years. It's like trying to complete a giant puzzle when half the pieces are missing and the box cover has been thrown away. You can see the outline. The graduation from Northwestern University is well documented. Her time opening briefcases on Deal or No Deal is easy to find on video. The premiere of Suits has photos and press coverage. Those milestones are clear and verifiable. But the stretches between them feel compressed, almost skipped over. It's like watching a film where 10 important minutes of character development have been cut, leaving you wondering how the story jumped so quickly from point A to point B.
Many people out there have been speculating on that Meghan Markle has lied about her age. Is she actually?
At one point she's an unknown actress. The next, she appears to be living a lifestyle that doesn't quite line up with the roles or the reported income. The transition feels abrupt. The timeline skips ahead in ways that don't naturally connect, leaving gaps that are hard to ignore. This isn't about denying anyone their privacy. Everyone deserves parts of their life that stay off camera. No one expects a public figure to record every errand or casual moment. But when transparency becomes the foundation of your brand, when authenticity and living your truth are presented as the core of your public identity and business, scrutiny comes with it. Once people notice the edits, the story starts to feel less like an organic life unfolding and more like a narrative shaped after the fact. Certain moments are spotlighted. Others are quietly skipped or left out entirely. And as attention focused on those missing stretches, the years she was said to be working, auditioning, and pushing for a break, one thing kept coming up. The details were always vague.
Of Meghan holiday celebration is Netflix announcing to the world, we are done.
The descriptions were always broad. Struggles were mentioned, sacrifices were implied, but the specifics were missing. No awkward side jobs with receipts. No uncomfortable auditions with casting directors who remembered her. None of the messy, very human details that usually surface when someone talks honestly about their early grind. It was in those blurred stretches of time, where dates felt loose and events overlapped in strange ways, that online researchers began digging. At first, it was small inconsistencies. A timeline that didn't quite match. A detail that shifted depending on the interview. On their own, each one seemed minor. Together, they started to form a pattern. And once people saw that pattern, it was hard to ignore. That's when attention shifted to the one voice many had written off for years, her half-sister, Samantha Markle. For a long time, the story felt straightforward. Meghan was portrayed as the wronged party. Samantha was framed as the resentful relative trying to benefit from her sister's rise. The media largely reinforced that version. Every time Samantha spoke publicly, the reaction followed a familiar script.
Hold a title no one expected. Not just mother, not just duchess, but grandmother. This isn't a rumor born on the...
For years, whenever she spoke out, it was packaged as just another outburst from someone who couldn't accept her sister's rise. The labels came fast and easy. Attention-seeking. Bitter. Trying to stay relevant. It fit neatly into the fairy tale storyline the public had already embraced. A modern princess escaping a difficult family and stepping into a new life. People didn't question it because the narrative was simple and satisfying. Then the energy shifted. Samantha Markle stopped delivering emotional sound bites that could be dismissed as family drama. The tone changed. Instead of dramatic accusations, she began making careful suggestions. Small hints. Subtle references. She didn't lay everything out in explosive detail. She implied. What stood out was the composure. The calm delivery didn't match the image of someone frantic for attention. It felt measured. Controlled. Less like someone lashing out, and more like someone who believed time would eventually do the talking. That shift made people pause. Because this no longer looked like random anger thrown into the media hoping something would land. It felt deliberate.
Look into the early years of this woman and try and discover...
It started to look less like random noise and more like strategy. Like someone who believed she had information, and was simply waiting for the right time to use it. Samantha Markle began referencing old documents, records from the 1990s that she suggested had never been fully examined. She didn't flood interviews with paperwork. She didn't lay everything out in dramatic fashion. Instead, she would mention something briefly, then move on. No full explanation. No immediate proof of it. Just enough to plant a question. And that approach changed the dynamic. When someone is loud and emotional, most people tune it out. It's easy to label it as bitterness and move on. But when someone calmly implies there's more beneath the surface, that unshared information exists, that something has been overlooked, people lean closer. They start asking their own questions. They fill in the silence. That subtle shift in tone forced a reassessment. Suddenly, she wasn't just the angry relative shouting into the media cycle. She seemed measured. Intentional. And that made people look at her differently.
Meghan, a regular college girl at Northwestern University. No cameras flashing, no royal title, no palace walls.
Gradually, she stopped looking like the obvious antagonist and started looking more like a potential witness. Someone who had been present. Someone who remembered details that others might prefer stayed buried. The claims she hinted at were not minor. Samantha Markle suggested that the carefully marketed image of honesty and authenticity was not as solid as it appeared. She implied that key parts of the story shared publicly, including what was presented to the royal family, may not have been entirely accurate. The suggestion was that important details were shaped in a way that helped secure the relationship and everything that followed. For years, much of the public had dismissed her as resentful or attention-seeking. But once she shifted her tone, people began asking uncomfortable questions. What if the assumptions had been wrong? What if the person labeled bitter was convinced she was exposing something real? And what if the carefully managed public image told only part of the story? The less she spelled out directly, the more speculation grew. Silence, in this case, did more work than shouting ever could.
I'll tell you why. What she told the royal family, what she told Harry, wouldn't have jived, wouldn't have been consistent with the truth.
Because once Samantha Markle...
The more she hinted, the more people started digging for themselves. They went back to interviews, public records, old articles. They compared timelines. They lined up dates. And once they began looking closely, the small inconsistencies felt harder to ignore. That's the thing about doubt. Once it's planted, it changes how you see everything that follows. What once seemed smooth and polished starts to look carefully arranged. And when people begin to suspect they've been handed a curated version of events rather than the full picture, they start searching for what's missing. The suggestions coming from Samantha Markle pushed online investigators to go straight to original records instead of relying on headlines or commentary. That's when the tone shifted from celebrity chatter to something closer to an amateur investigation. 1 year kept resurfacing in discussions, 1997. It stood out because it appeared to sit inside one of those blurred stretches in her timeline. A period that wasn't fully explained. A gap that seemed small at first, but became more interesting the closer people looked.